Salute Your Sports Week 28. Comment Enchev, Drew Brackett, Tom Castleman. We've got a fun show for you today. A little bit later on, we'll continue our NFL draft special we've been doing the last few weeks with a look at some of the all-time busts, worst picks in draft history.
And we'll be looking at a lot of the teams that have been doing said busting, teams that have had some poor luck. We'll also be touching on some Major League Baseball as well. Have a couple surprising teams leading their divisions at the start of the season, so we'll be touching on that as well. Who's going to stick around to the end of the year?
Yeah, I look forward to you guys educating me about baseball, but we'll start off with the association. Steph Curry has scored at least 30 in 11 straight games, and he broke Kobe Bryant's record as the only one to do at age 33 or older. So the question is, what NBA player of all time, the most fun to watch and the most dominant when they got hot during the game or even a longer stretch, Common?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. First off, I want to preface this that I will not be including Wilt Chamberlain because he does have the most 50-point games of all time. The guy averaged 50 points over a whole season. He has more than twice as many 50-point games than the closest guy, which is, of course, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. But he got it done in the paint, so maybe that's not as exciting for some. So I'll leave him off my list. But a few guys that come to mind off the top of my head is, of course, Michael Jordan, the second most 50-point games. I know we saw him in the 91 NBA Finals make 11 shots in a row, which the last one was. What a spectacular move by Jordan when he switches hands. He had all the moves, the jumpers, the athleticism. I think Kobe is kind of a lesser version of Jordan. And then in recent years, we've seen guys like Damian Lillard get hot. Klay Thompson had a 37-point quarter, I think, most points in NBA history. And then, of course, the guy we just mentioned, Stephen Curry, on a crazy stretch. Those are just some of the names that come to mind. Want to run it by you guys, what you think, and then I'll kind of make my pick. I'll narrow my list down. Allen Iverson also, another guy that was fun to watch back in the day when he got hot.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many great scorers across the NBA landscape over the history of the league. I don't know if I could necessarily pick, one singular one out as being the greatest, but certainly to touch on a couple others from at least, quote unquote, my era of watching basketball, I feel like got to give some love to Dirk Nowitzki, representing the big men in an outside kind of way. When we think about dominance, you certainly think of, Wilt Chamberlain, a more modern version, Shaquille O'Neal, just bullying people in the post. Some people are able to do it from beyond the arc. Some people, they just score no matter how hard you try to foul them. But in terms of scoring, I mean, I'm going to go with a local homer pick. It's probably something that nobody would even guess, so I'm not even going to ask you guys to try.
Ooh, Horace Grant?
No,
but
I know it is a Chicago Bull.
You're going to go with Kirk Heinrich.
I'm going to go with his backcourt mate, Ben Gordon.
Jamal Crawford. Oh, Ben Gordon. Okay.
Ben Gordon, yeah. No, that was in his time being a Bull from 2004 to, I forgot when he got traded away. That was when I was 8th grade high school, listening to Johnny Red Kerr on the WGN broadcast and Ben Gordon just scoring away. And he could get hot like that. He wasn't necessarily at an all-time level, but in terms of just pure enjoyment and the guy that I watched the most, I mean, Ben Gordon could get hot as anybody in the league when he was playing. So he's certainly a worthwhile mention, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go with Shaquille O'Neal. That guy was 100 pounds heavier and maybe not a foot taller. He was, a few inches taller than most every player on the court. And when you have that kind of advantage, you just feed him in the post, and that's exactly what the Lakers did. Even when he was on the Magic, they did that. So I think it's got to be Shaq. Kobe to Shaq was just a thing in the 90s, and he was just so dominant. He's not putting up 50 points a game, but just nobody could stop him, right? I mean, there's literally a play called Hack a Shaq named after him. So got to give it to Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all good answers, Tom. Also, Jamal Crawford, if you're talking about former Bulls that get hot. He had 50-point games with, I think, 3 different teams. The Knicks, and I think, was it the Hawks or the Clippers? I don't even remember his last 50-point game. But
I think it was with the Hawks.
It was with the Hawks, I think, too. But that's definitely another name that comes to mind. I think, for me, I was thinking more of kind of, guys that get hot from the outside. I think Shaq is a very good answer if you're looking for a consistent scorer. But, I mean, I'm looking at the list of all-time greatest, streak shooters, career 50-point games, and Shaq's not in the top 11. So, for me, I can't go with Shaq on that list. For me, I kind of narrowed it down. I looked at different scorers. You have James Harden and Stephen Curry are similar in that they get a lot of it done from the perimeter. I simply like Curry because he's had a better shooting percentage, better three-point percentage than Harden, which is why, for the same reason why I like Michael Jordan over Kobe Bryant. I think you look at some of MJ's 50, 60-point games, he's shooting well over 50% from the floor. A lot of Kobe's, legendary games, he's at roughly 50%, or even like his last game, he was like 45% that game that he scored 60-something. So I'm looking at efficiency, because when you're thinking of a streak shooter, you're thinking of who can't miss. So I think you look at Jordan had more efficient numbers than Kobe when Kobe would get hot, although that 81-point game does stand kind of in its own category for the single hottest game. So I give Jordan an edge over Kobe because he was more efficient. I give Curry an edge over Harden because he was more efficient. And to me, it goes down to Michael Jordan and Stephen Curry. I think they both have a multitude of moves. I think Jordan has the fadeaways, the up and unders, the dunks. It's really exciting to watch him do it. But I actually think Curry's threes off the dribble are even more fun to watch. And I think, as you know, threes are worth more than twos. So I like Stephen Curry. I've watched, you guys know me, I'm a diehard Bulls fan. Michael Jordan's certainly much more consistent than Stephen Curry and is the greatest player of all time. Obviously LeBron in that conversation too. But I think Curry, when he gets hot, is more exciting. I think when you hit that three from so far out, I actually think that's even more impressive than a dunk, than a layup, than a crazy fadeaway jumper. So maybe I'm caught up in the moment, but for me it's Curry, and he's the first guy this old, by the way, to also average 30 points per game in a season since Jordan in 1996. So hats off to all those guys. I mean, really fun to watch those guys play basketball.
I'll also give a shout-out to Carmelo Anthony, one of the greatest scorers of all time.
Yeah.
And then J.R. Smith, one of the streakiest shooters of all time. I've seen that guy go 9 of 10 from deep, and then the next night go 0 of 9. Not really, but, he's just one of the streakiest guys out there.
And he had one of those games against the Bulls, I think, when he was back on the Nuggets, where he made, like, every three-pointer. And this is when I was younger, and, like, I wasn't really as familiar with J.R. Smith at the time. And I was like, who is this guy? He just kept making three after three after three. Allen Iverson was a lot like J.R. Smith, by the way. I think he was a guy who can go like 7 for 8 and go 0 for 6 from the floor. So, yeah, I mean, a lot.
Yeah, but AI was a good player, though. He wasn't just a streaky shooter. I mean, Allen Iverson was he's a great driver as well. I mean, his speed and athleticism was off the charts.
But he had back-to-back 30-point seasons, didn't he? Like, that's like
averaging, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but if you take a look at his field goal percentage, if you look more closely into it, you'll see that his percentage wasn't that good. So hence why he belongs on my overrated list, by the way. I look at the field goal percentage. Like when I think of hot, I think of like scorching hot. He can't miss. Like Curry shooting 10 to 17 from threes the other night, or last night that was, in that win against the Sixers, which was really neat because it was Steph Curry against Seth Curry, the brothers, and they were guarding each other at one point. And of course, the dad was a three-point shooter. Fun fact, actually, you might know this, but Seth Curry actually has a better three-point percentage in his career than Stephen Curry. In fact, the only player in the history of the NBA with a better three-point percentage than Seth Curry is Steve Kerr, Stephen Curry's coach. So you had three of the all-time great shooters on the court at the same time. Of course, Seth Curry and Steve Kerr shoot a lot more open looks. Obviously, if they shot the fadeaways and the crazy shots, and the sheer volume that Steph Curry shot, they would not be shooting better than him. But that is quite the shooting family, the Currys, and quite the list of shooters on the basketball court last night in that Sixers-Warriors game. Also, Klay Thompson not shooting, but I think he was on the bench.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're caught up in the moment. You know, you got to give honorable mention to Reggie Miller, who had the greatest 8 seconds of basketball of all time.
Against the Knicks,
Of course.
When he scored 8 points in like 10 seconds.
8 seconds, yeah. 15, 8 seconds.
Got the 3, stole it, hit another 3, then got fouled, hit a couple free throws. I think that was in the playoffs against the Knicks. I know that what's the actor? Spike Smith?
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee
was there. I think that was different.
Patrick Ewing was in the house.
Yeah, it was.
He was on the team.
Was recognized back then at New York, Madison Square Garden.
He was
not as recognizable over there these days. Yeah, I mean a lot of good shooters. A couple other guys. We haven't mentioned Rick Barry from way back in the day. Speaking of the Warriors, the dude at 17 50-point games. That's the 5th most ever. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Peja Stojakovic was a good shooter with the Kings back in the day. I don't know that he got as hot where he would hit quite as many. But the statistic that's crazy is when you're talking about three-pointers, Stephen Curry has 21 games where he made 10 three-pointers, and the second closest is Clay, who has 5 over their whole career. So that's 4 times as many that Steph has from 3, and he has like 5 games with 10 threes or more this season alone, I think, which is more than anyone else except, tied with Clay in the history of basketball. So Stephen Curry is doing things that we've simply never seen before. And when I think of getting hot, I think of just pure shooting. That's why I don't think of Shaq as much as I love Shaq. Shaq would get it down low and pound it, and just he was hot every night, but he also didn't get 40, 50 looks because he was getting fouled a lot. He went to the free throw line. He missed a lot there. So he was more consistent than any of those guys, but the pure streak shooting, I don't know that I would put him up there with Stephen Curry and Michael Jordan. In terms of seasons, I think we had MJ in 87-88 averaged 35 points per game. That was pretty crazy. Kobe in 05-06, 35 a game. Harden in 2018-19, 36 a game over the season. Those are the highest scoring averages other than Wilt Chamberlain when looking at modern history. But again, Harden's field goal percentage and Kobe's lower than MJ's. And Stephen Curry, by the way, this season leading the NBA in scoring now is on par with his unanimous MVP season. So I think the injuries, getting more time to rest has kind of revitalized him, and all of a sudden he's in the MVP race. I think Nikola Jokic is the favorite, but man, if you watched the game last night, there's no way that Embiid is more valuable than Steph Curry. He struggled down the stretch. Steph Curry hit like 4 threes in the last 4 minutes. I know just one game, but I like Curry over Embiid at this point. Got to for sure be at least number 2 on the MVP race at the moment, I would think, right?
Probably, yeah. I haven't checked the latest updated odds on that, but I'm sure that Curry's getting shorter and shorter as the season progresses.
Yeah, he's 3rd on the odds. He went from like 50-1 to 20-1 in the span of a week. So Nikola Jokic at -400 is a heavy favorite. Steph Curry, I think, is like close 3rd behind Embiid in the latest MVP odds. And gaining. I certainly tell you this. I would not want to play him in the play-in game if you're the Mavericks or the Grizzlies or the Spurs, whoever ends up in that 7-10 range. I don't want to walk in and play Stephen Curry, and I know a lot of the guys are gone, but Draymond Green is there, Steve Kerr is there. They've got that championship pedigree. That is not a first-round series that I would want to be playing. And imagine the Utah Jazz, who have the top seed in the West. They could, in theory, end up playing the Warriors in the first round and then the Lakers in the second round if they get there. So talk about a reward for getting potentially the best record in the NBA. Utah Jazz are not smiling right now, I can tell you that much.
No, they're probably not smiling, but we'll move to some folks who may be smiling still because of the money they received. And that's the NFL draft. Our draft special continues, and number one picks, number one overall pick. They get a lot of money regardless how good they are, so they're smiling. But who's the worst number one overall pick? Who's the biggest bust in NFL history, Common?
Oh, man. I'm going to give you a couple good names. I think there's an obvious answer, but I'm going to give you one old school name that you guys may not be aware of. That would be Terry Baker, quarterback with the Los Angeles Rams, 1963. I've got this off an article online. I think this was Fox Sports Southwest, or where's the link? Anyways, I got this from online, so I'll read this little resume that consists his career. So Baker's collegiate resume is one not seen before or since. A multi-sport standout at Oregon State, Baker is the only player ever to win a Heisman Trophy and play in the Final Four, and his athleticism made him an easy top overall selection by the Los Angeles Rams. Unbelievably, Baker played a total of only 18 games in the NFL and threw a mere 21 passes, 19 of which came his rookie season. Also deployed at running back. He didn't fare much better there either, averaging 3.6 yards per carry on 58 total carries. His NFL career finished at 26. He left the league without ever throwing a touchdown pass. Number one overall pick at quarterback, never throws a touchdown pass. So that's kind of the old school reference I think of. Then I'll get into some of these modern guys. Obviously, Tim Couch, Achilles Smith, Drew mentioned earlier, or maybe off air. And I think obviously Jamarcus.
Yeah, that was off the air.
That was off the air.
Yeah.
Jamarcus Russell also up there. But I mean, what do you guys think? I'll give you my pick in a little bit. But what are some of the guys you think of when you hear this? Not named Terry Baker.
So I've got two for you, and one you might not even really consider as being a bust, considering that he had a really good career. How about that for a bit of an inverse? In 1986, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers spent the number one draft pick on Bo Jackson, a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal football player. Thing is, Bo Jackson, prior to the draft, told the team that he would not play for them. Tampa drafted him anyway. He refused to play, and after the team forfeited his rights, the Raiders took him the next year in the second round, I think it was, and let him to continue his career as a two-sport pro athlete. So we talk about, players that end up being busts. How about just the pick in general ended up being a bust? The guy never played a game for them for the number one overall pick. They got nothing for it, nothing in a trade, no sort of value recouped on the pick. So, I mean, at least all the other guys that we're going to be talking about at least played a little bit for the teams. Tampa Bay Buccaneers got literally nothing for the number one overall pick in 1986. The other one that I consider as far as busts go is really just like a bust in terms of a tragic story. It's Todd Marinovich, the so-called Robo QB, drafted 24th overall, so a little bit later in the first round, but basically his dad conditioned him from birth to be an athlete, was doing stretches and conditioning with him when he was an infant in the crib, didn't have much of a social life growing up. So, whenever he was at parties, he had to eat separate food and drink separate beverages because no sugar or anything like that. And unfortunately, later in life, came to become a substance abuser, addicted to various substances, arrested for having cocaine. Before the draft, was still drafted in the first round, believe it or not, after that. So definitely a tragic story there of a different sort of a bust player based on how his dad chose to try to raise or condition his kid.
Wow. Well, on that note, I want to say Tim. I want to say Tim Couch, but he led the Browns to the playoffs, so that's not the answer. I think the answer is probably Jamarcus Russell. I mean, this is a guy who very highly coveted at LSU, won the Sugar Bowl, MVP of that game, selected by the Raiders, first overall pick in 2007, and then he had a contract holdout until the second week of the season, and just had really high expectations. I remember the hype, and his career. He played 3 seasons and started 25 games, threw 18 touchdowns, 23 interceptions, but lost 15 fumbles for Pete's sake. So just not an ideal career. for him and just was so highly regarded coming out of LSU.
Yeah, I think Jamarcus Russell is the answer for me as well. He had a lot of issues on the field as well as off the field. He was arrested for possession of codeine cough syrup in 2010, never played again. I think we remember him when he was at the NFL Combine. He was throwing the ball 75 yards on a knee. He had one of the greatest arms in the history of this league, and it just never materialized. 17 and 7 and 18 as a starting quarterback, completed only 52% of his passes, and he kind of entered the league right as it became a passing era, and he averaged only 131.7 passing yards per game. That's a really low number. 18 touchdowns, 23 picks, as Drew said. 7 and 18 as a starter. He just completely was a bust. Again, one of the greatest arms we've ever seen, and he couldn't do anything. A couple other names that do come to mind. He's the one that wins it for me. But Kajana Carter of the Bengals, top number 1 overall pick in 1995. At running back, he never had 500 rush yards in any season, only 3.6 yards per carry, had many injuries in his career. He was a big bust. Tim Couch, again, in Cleveland, yes, he had injuries. The guy had a rocket arm. He led him to the playoffs one year. Nothing happened ever since. So those are some of the guys in terms of number 1 overall pick. Tom mentioned a guy who wasn't picked number 1 overall, but another guy who was just a big bust that wasn't number 1 overall is Ryan Leaf. And he was considered one of the greatest quarterback prospects in the history of the league. And the only reason he wasn't drafted number 1 overall is because Peyton Manning was in his draft, and many people thought that the Colts made the wrong decision picking Peyton Manning. Ryan Leaf was 4 and 17 as a starter. He had a 48% completion percentage, less than half his passes, 14 touchdowns, and 36 interceptions. Those numbers actually make Jamarcus Russell look good. That's how bad Ryan Leaf was as a starter. I had the chance to interview him last year when he came and spoke in Missouri, and he gave a very good speech about kind of getting his life back on track. Of course, he had addiction as well with drugs, now a motivational speaker. So he's got his life on track. He has the money, as Drew said, but certainly in terms of the NFL career, he's definitely one of the all-time busts, if not the biggest bust in the history of the National Football League.
Moving on to is there a team or franchise that's really had a bad string of drafts, Tom?
I mean, as a Bears fan,
right?
I can at least look down at the Detroit Lions, as a Bears fan. The Bears have had at least a couple okay enough drafts. But yeah, I think I don't really have much room to be throwing stones in this here glass house. I mean, Lions are up there as being an awful one. I mean, you guys talked about, Tim Couch. The Browns rarely seem to get it right, although with Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett as their most recent number 1 overall picks, they might be turning it around some. And then the Jaguars, of course, they have the number 1 overall pick this year in the upcoming NFL draft. They've had plenty of misses. Leonard Fournette, Blake Bortles, Justin Blackmon, the receiver out of Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Didn't they select Blaine Gabbert too?
Yep, sure did.
So Jaguars are up there as being one of those teams. We'll see if they can mess up the number 1 pick this year.
I think the Jaguars are a very good answer. But honorable mention to the Jets.
The Jets have made some bad picks. I think certainly Mark Sanchez or butt fumble, whatever you want to call him, comes to mind, talking about quarterbacks that are busts. Tom, you mentioned 2 things I have written down. I couldn't agree more with you, so we're kind of on the same page today. First off, as a Bears fan, it's got to be the Chicago Bears, because if you think about all the great defensive players they've drafted, they've never, ever, ever drafted a really good quarterback. You look at Jay Cutler, pretty much holds all their passing yards records, and they got him in a trade. Just thinking in recent memory, Mitchell Trubisky was a failure. He's off to the Bills now to back up Josh Allen. I know Cade McNown, the first guy I grew up watching. was a bust in the first round. Rex Grossman also, even though we took him to the Super Bowl somehow. One of the most
he was along for the ride for the Super Bowl. That was defense and Devin Hester.
Correct. Speaking of Devin Hester, put him in the Hall of Fame. A lot of talk about Julian Edelman retiring. Does he belong in the Hall of Fame? Well, Devin Hester certainly belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Julian Edelman can buy a ticket the same as the rest of us.
That's right. Agreed. But I think of this, Tom, the streak the Detroit Lions had from about 2002 to about 2005 was one of the all-time worst streaks of all time. You look at Joey Harrington, they selected in 2002 with the first overall pick, and in his career, 26-50 record, 79 touchdowns, 85 picks. He had way more touchdowns than picks. Really poor quarterback rating. Again, completion percentage just over 50%. So they drafted Harrington thinking he was going to be the future. And then they drafted a couple bust wide receivers for him. Let me pull up the stats here. They drafted Charles Rogers the following year with the second pick overall, wide receiver. And guess what? The guy played only 15 games for them, only had 4 touchdowns in his whole career in the National Football League. Number 2 overall pick as a wide receiver, as I'm trying to scroll here. Here we go. Thank you, computer. He had 243 receiving yards his first season. Third season only played 1 game, didn't even get a yard. And his fourth season, he played 9 games, 197 yards. So the second overall pick had 4 touchdowns and just over 400 yards. But they said, you know what? Why don't we try another receiver in 2005? Just 2 years later, they drafted Mike Williams with the 10th overall pick, and he had 5 career touchdown passes for the Lions, just over 1,000 yards receiving in his career, never even close to 500 yards in a single season. So I actually got 751 when he left Detroit with Seattle, but still didn't do anything in Seattle or didn't do anything in Detroit. So for me, it's got to be the Lions, and they had Barry Sanders, and they won 1 playoff game. So I know they hit on a few picks with Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford eventually, but they've got a history of bad picks. The Cleveland Browns, also the Cincinnati Bengals. I mentioned the running back, also Kelly Smith, the quarterback. So those are some of the franchises I think of not doing a very good job in the NFL draft.
Well, guess we'll move to the Diamond, and I hear the Red Sox are doing well, but Royals, Reds, Mariners, surprise teams, too early in the season, leading their divisions though. Common, who's the most likely to actually win the division by the end of it?
That's a tough question. I don't know that any of these teams will necessarily win the division. I think, first off, the Red Sox are a weird franchise. You look at what they're doing this season. This happens a lot of seasons. They have a really bad season, then have a really good season out of nowhere. So who knows what's going to happen there. But I'm not picking the Red Sox because they play in the same division as the Rays, the Yankees, the Blue Jays. So much talent there. The Royals have a lot of talented hitters. Soler, Merrifield, Perez, Dozier, now Benintendi, a former Red Sox, but not nearly enough pitching. I do think the Royals could get to 500 this year, though, which would be a massive improvement for them. The Mariners, they're about middle of the pack in hitting and pitching. They are 11-6, and they've got a -2 run differential. I think 11-7. They just lost to the Dodgers, but they've done very well in 1-run games, so I don't think they're the answer. The Reds, to me, I think are the most likely. They made the playoffs last season. I know it was a COVID season, and they only got in because of that extra seating and stuff. But they play in the worst division. The Cubs are a mess right now. The Cardinals aren't playing as good as people thought they would. The Brewers are a shadow of what they used to be. The Pirates, arguably the worst team in baseball. And the Reds, they don't have the great pitching now that they lost Bauer, but Votto, Castellanos, Moustakas, they have a good lineup. The Reds, I think, definitely the most likely to win the division of those teams.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and it's exactly like you said. I don't anticipate any of these teams being in first place come the end of the season. I don't see any of these teams being in second place come the end of the season. I think it's going to be a struggle for any of them to be in third place by the end of the season. But if there's any division that's going to let a bad team stick around, it is the National League Central, followed somewhat closely by the American League Central. I think the Royals do have some pretty good talent. Their pitching is lacking, to be sure, but those two divisions right in the middle of the country where you don't have a couple of big payroll teams, even though some of those teams really could be big payroll teams, they choose to not be. And as a consequence, you have more margin for error as a lower team in those divisions to kind of hang around a little bit and do better than perhaps expected. I think over time, Royals will probably fall back to battling Detroit for the bottom of the division. Reds actually could probably contend for the third spot in the NL Central, depending on how the rest of things go there. But yeah, no, the rest of these teams I think will be falling down in short order in their divisions.
Even the Red Sox?
Even the Red Sox. Yeah, I think the Yankees right now are a good team that's playing poorly. I think that the Rays and the Blue Jays and the Yankees, baseball's a marathon season. I think larger sample size, those teams will rise up above the Red Sox, I think.
I think so too, Tom. I will say this. Definitely the Reds, I think, will for sure finish top 3, if not top 2, and they could finish first. I think the Reds, I definitely wouldn't say they're not going to be top 3, or was it top 2? I don't know what you were saying, but
not top 2. Yeah,
top
contending
2.
For top 3.
I would take the Reds at top 2. I was thinking between the Cubs and Cardinals, and again, it's very early in the season. Those talented hitters that the Cubs have could decide to start hitting, but right now all they're doing is striking out. So if you can't put the ball in play, you're not going to win enough baseball games. So I think it'll be probably a pretty close race between the Reds, Cardinals, and Cubs. Given the Reds' hot start, I could say they'll finish in the top 2. I think better start hot than cold, I think, is the answer. So we'll see. But, again, it's baseball. You never know. It's way too early in the season. Certainly the Dodgers' hot start, I would take that to believe because it's the Dodgers. But the teams, none of these teams were projected to win their divisions. So I think they're definitely off to a little bit of a hot start.
There's got to be one of these teams, at least one or two of these teams that continue. I know it's baseball, it's a sprint, or it's a long season, but, the Red Sox have the second best run differential in baseball right now. Reds are in third. That must mean something, right?
Right. Well, and you hit it. Those are probably the two most likely teams. But I don't know. I have to put up the Red Sox schedule. I probably should have. But I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know. It's hard because the Red Sox are tricky. They always do this. They have a really bad season, then they have a really good season. I know one of the years they won the World Series, they were under 500 the year before. So they certainly could surprise somebody. But for me, I don't know. I tend to agree more with Tom, but I guess we'll have to wait for the larger sample size because baseball is a marathon, and this season they are playing 162 games instead of the 60-game season, which we saw last year, which could allow for more flukes.
All right. Well, moving on to locks of the week. Common, I know you're the trying to think of a good word, not the tally man. You tally the result. Yeah, okay, scorekeeper. All right, thank you, Tom.
Scorekeeper and the recapper. And first off, all three of us had a winning week, by the way. I had 2 wins and a tie. Drew had 2 wins and a tie. Tom had 2 wins and a loss. But before I get into specifics of recapping locks of the week, I have a question for you, Drew. Are you even aware of what happened in the game that you tied?
No. No. In short, no.
So you actually should have had a 3-0 week. You had one of the most heartbreaking draws you can get. You picked Cardiff City and Reading under 2 goals in the Championship Soccer League. It was 0-0 heading into the 87th minute of 90 minutes minus stoppage time. 87th minute, we get a goal. The 94th minute in stoppage time, we get a second goal. for a 1-1 draw. So you really should have hit the under 2 goals there. You really got in trouble at the end of the game there.
Wow, that's utter garbage, what you just mentioned. Well, I'm glad I went, got the other 2 wins and the other, I guess probably once. Or did I bet all soccer? I think it was all soccer.
No, you had a baseball. You had the
I had
Mets
a
over
baseball.
the Phillies last Wednesday.
Right.
The Mets winning 5-1. You had Bundesliga soccer. Berlin and Stuttgart over 2.5 goals. I told you the Bundesliga gets a lot of goals. I told you you'd be right with that pick, and you were barely 2-1 final, just getting the 3 goals there. Meanwhile, Tom was 2-1 on his baseball card. He had the Dodgers -1.5 over the Rockies. That hit. He had the Angels over the Royals. He missed that one. The Royals winning 3-2. And he had the Giants over the Reds. The Giants winning a shootout 7-6 in that game. I was 2 wins and a tie, just like Drew. I had Suns Heat under 217.5. Only 192 points in that game. Can you get me some bonus for that one? Because I got that one by a good margin. Damian Lillard over 25.5 points against the Celtics. He had 28 points in that one. I called it a mortgage bet, and for the first time ever, if you listen to me to bet your mortgage, you did, in fact, save your house because Damian Lillard got over 25.5. And finally, I had Man City and Dortmund under 3 goals. It was 2-1 Man City in that one, so I got a wash there. So I am leading Drew on the season, but it's only by 3 games. So, and Tom is in 3rd place because he doesn't have any ties. He actually has the same amount of wins as Drew, but no ties. So what do you have this week, Tom?
All right. So going for the MLB card on this one, let's go with Mets over the Cubs. The Cubs are at the bottom of their division. You can get Mets over Cubs at -125. Let's see. I don't know how I feel about this player prop. Taijuan Walker was at 5 strikeouts for the over-under prior to the show, but the Cubs offense has been pretty down. It's a cold night here in Chicago. I'll take Taijuan Walker over 5.5 strikeouts in that Mets and Cubs game.
Couldn't agree more.
And then let's see here. I can go a couple different ways. I think I'll take the Astros over the Rockies on the money line as well, also at -125. Rockies in last place, Astros underperforming. But I look for Dusty Baker to get his guys the win tonight.
Former Cub legend. Give him the credit that he's due. They should welcome him back. Talk about welcoming Sammy Sosa back. Welcome Dusty Baker back. Give him some love. Drew, what do you got?
All right. Tomorrow, NHL, I'm going to go Blackhawks over the Predators. Castleman, you'll like that pick. You can get that plus money, plus 100 on the money line. Blackhawks over the Preds. And then
beat them last time, like yesterday.
Oh, did they?
A couple of days ago, I think so.
Oh, wow.
But anyways, maybe
revenge game.
Revenge game.
Then we'll go to the EPL Saturday morning. Liverpool against Newcastle United under 2.5 goals. And then Saturday, La Liga, Real Madrid against Real Betis under 2.5 goals as well.
Real Betis.
Betis.
Betis. Well, yeah, I'll tell you this. Betis does tend to have some high-scoring games. So, I don't know. We'll see. Real Madrid does have a good defense, and Real Madrid has a great goalie. But they've got a lot of
What did you think about the Newcastle-Liverpool pick?
What was the pick? Say it again?
Under 2.5 goals.
Well, it's the English Premier League, and you picked the under, so it'll probably hit because you always hit the English Premier League under in soccer. So, but you never know because Liverpool is very bipolar. So we'll see what they do. I am gonna go with a Castleman prop. I'm surprised Castleman didn't do any props.
I did the one.
Go ahead. Oh, you did one. You did do one. Oh, the over strikeouts. Okay, so NBA prop. This one you might as well bet your whole mortgage on. That's how confident I feel about this one. I got Harrison Barnes over 1.5 3-pointers, so needs 2 threes or more at plus 108. So you can get money there really good odds. He averages 1.6 threes a game, shooting 37% from three, which is pretty good. He's made at least 2 3-pointers in 4 straight games, including 5 the last game, so he's heating up. And how about this? The Timberwolves, the team he's playing, get this, are last in the NBA in opponent three-point percentage at 39.5%. So Barnes should get some open looks, should definitely get at least 2 3-pointers in that game. And I've got a all Kings Timberwolves card tonight, by the way. So
oh boy, 2 teams that aren't even in the playoff hunt. Here we go.
I'm looking at 2
throwing those darts.
I'm looking at some really bad basketball, but I've got some good statistics, as you just heard, to back it up. Here's another statistic for you. The Timberwolves have lost 7 straight road games. They have the worst record in the league at 15-43, tied with the Rockets. They're just 5-24 on the road, the worst road record in the NBA. I like the Kings minus 3.5 over the Timberwolves, the Kings at home. I know the Kings have played really bad as well, but to win by 4, not a lot of points against a horrific Timberwolves team. So give me the Kings minus 3.5. And speaking of bad basketball, yes, these 2 teams are terrible at defense, but man, they're not that great at offense either. I like Kings T-Wolves under 239.5. That over-under stuck with me. That is a really high over-under. You take a look at these 2 teams. T-Wolves games this season average of 227 points. Meanwhile, 233 points average Kings games. Last time they played, we had 222 points. So I'm really curious where this 239.5 number, where the odds makers got it from. They tend to get it right pretty close, so it'll probably be close to that number, but I'm feeling pretty good that we'll be under the 239.5.
All right. Well, I'll start with a salute because I know the statements could get interesting a little later.
Your salute, by the way, is going to be the same one I have written down, but I knew you were going to pick it, so I was like, well, why did I even write this down? So go ahead.
Exactly. Why write it down?
Smith.
Well, yeah, Alex Smith. Salute to Alex Smith.
Yeah.
Announced his retirement on Monday. This guy he played at Utah, All-American, won the Fiesta Bowl in 2005. He was number 1 overall pick by the 49ers, and, you know, he had his ups and downs throughout his career. He was on the Chiefs. I mean, he backed up Colin Kaepernick on the Niners. Then he got traded to the Chiefs, and then he was on the Washington football team, and he had that life-threatening injury to his right leg that, you know, was really, really difficult, and he was able to overcome a lengthy rehab process, and he won the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. So just hats off to Alex Smith. Always a fun quarterback to watch. And, you know, I remember the hype coming out of Utah. There was a lot of hype for him.
And what was amazing about him is that he was like a 2 or 3-star recruit in high school, and he really built his career in Utah into the top overall pick. Relative to the top overall pick, maybe you could argue he was a little bit of a bust, but he was a really good guy. If you really listen to what his teammates have to say about him, his former teammates, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid coming out with a lot of kind words. Just an all-around good guy, and really cool career, really cool comeback for him. Certainly hats off to Alex Smith. Do you have a statement too, Drew? Or is it just
my salute this week?
The salute that I predicted.
Yes, the salute that you predicted. Yes. I'll chime in on your statement.
Well, I actually have a quick question.
Yeah.
I have a quick question on that salute. Did either of you guys ever feel like it was kind of weird or uncomfortable when Alex Smith came back and played for the Washington football team? Because like the game that happened, I remember watching the highlights, and there's this shot of his wife and his kids, you know, like up in the stands. It was social distance, so it's really easy to pick them out, and like they just never really looked comfortable. So like I feel like he was like, I want to overcome this. I want to come back, you know, to the NFL and everything like that. But given how much he had to go through, like I don't know, it felt like a little weird to me. That was like Like, why are you pushing this envelope? You're 36. Like, you just had a life-threatening injury. Why wouldn't you just, say like, yeah, I can make it back, but like my wife and kids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm out
I
on
mean,
one.
I get that. I just think they were extremely worried, after all he'd gone through setting foot out on a field again. I mean, one hit, and who knows what could happen. So I think it was just they're worrisome, and I think that was the first game that he came back because I think near, come the playoffs or whenever. I don't know if he even played in the playoffs.
That was Henneke, yeah.
Taylor Henneke.
Yeah. But I think, as they got comfortable with him, I think, they got more excited.
Yeah, I mean, Tom.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm not sure. I didn't really monitor their reactions throughout his comeback. I didn't have my sideline cam pointed at Alex Smith's wife and kids like Tom Castleman did. But I think you bring up a pretty good point, Tom, and maybe this is kind of like he got hurt again, of course, so maybe he was thinking like, look, I proved that I can do this. Let's call it a career. But it's interesting because there were reports that some doctors told him that like he could like literally die like over the surgery and over playing in the league again. So I mean, I could see why his wife would be uncomfortable with him taking that risk, because certainly he'd had a solid NFL career. He'd made enough money, obviously. So I can see why you would say it's not worth the risk. But obviously the risk paid off for him because kind of his stock, his lore, and everything. And that he showed his kids that you can persevere through anything and come back and play. So, yeah, I mean, it was neat. Tom, do you have a statement of the week?
I do. I regret that I have this statement because I don't really want to put a light on this, but I'm going to anyway. I'd rather spend more time talking about your statement of the week, quite frankly. But I'm sure you guys are painfully aware of the YouTube sensation that is Jake Paul and his pseudo boxing career type of thing. He's 3-0 now in fights, most notably, or actually entirely against guys who are not trained boxers. There's a lot of pay-per-view hype. There's a lot of people that buy in because he's just an attention magnet of some kind. And, I mean, it's a genius move for grabbing the money. You get this guy who's, kind of seems like a jerk. Don't know him personally, obviously. But, it's people want to either see him beat somebody up, his fans do, or people really want to see him get smacked down. And so far, Jake Paul's been laying down the hammer on people, most notably former NBA player Nate Robinson, a former dunk champion, all around in great shape, but great shape is different from boxing shape. So I think my statement of the week is
does not strike me like a boxer. I'll be honest.
Oh no, absolutely not. So. Like he's cut, he's stacked, he works out a lot. But that's different from being in boxing shape. You have to have a whole different set of skill and conditioning for that. So I think it's time to see a real fight, and I'm going to go with another former NBA player and a former Chicago Bull, Kendall Gill, who has been practicing the sweet science for years. He's been calling out Jake Paul to fight him. His camp says, nope, your following's too small. Who does Kendall Gill go to? None other than Shaquille O'Neal, who we mentioned earlier in the program, tweets out the promo for the fight, still can't get it. There are a few things that I dislike more than bullies, and there are a few things I dislike even more than bullies who profit on, in this case, literally punching down at people. Jake Paul is going after people who have no boxing training whatsoever, or minimal training leading up to the fight. He's been working on this for a good bit of time now. So statement of the week is it's time for him to face somebody who's actually a challenge, but I know that they're not going to, because once he hits the mat, the jig is up.
Drew, you can go ahead, and I have something for you as well, Tom.
Well, didn't he box or fight a former Mizzou wrestler, Ben Askren or something over the weekend?
He did.
Yes.
He did
and
do that.
Lost?
Yeah, Askren lost. So there's a couple things at play in that. Number one, he's older. He's known more as a grappler in MMA. He was never known as being a good striker. And then the other thing to consider is every single person that Jake Paul has fought is physically smaller than he is. So he has longer reach. So he basically comes into these fights with just about every single advantage over whoever he's fighting, and
So he's
got
like
the
Tom
TKO.
Brady. He picks out the best team. He picks out the best scenario, and he goes out and gets it done. He's just like Tom Brady.
That's a terrible comparison.
That's
I'm
more
just
akin to
kidding.
LeBron James going to Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and then going back to Cleveland with Kyrie Irving and a number one overall pick that turns into Kevin Love, and then goes to LA and doesn't really do anything until Anthony Davis comes along. So it's more akin to that than Tom Brady,
so
who stayed in one place.
You're attacking my guy there. I see what you're doing. I see.
It's also more appropriate, though, in terms of, free agency moving around, as opposed to Brady was just in one place. So it's a little bit more apples to apples.
Well done, Castleman.
Apples to Apples is a good board game, by the way. Have you guys ever played that game? That's a great board game.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable if you're interested in the PG version of Cards Against Humanity, which sometimes is much needed.
Yeah.
Well, for Cards Against Humanity, Tom needs a White Russian at his side.
Get sauced while I'm being saucy. I like it.
Yes.
Tom, what's your favorite board game? I know you're a big board game guy, aren't you?
Oh, man. I'm looking at the collection here. Actually, I can go ahead and show the...
See the collection. Oh, no. Oh, wow.
Can you see him, or did you lose Castleman?
the power cord out of my laptop here. No, I've got... It depends on the mood. I've got so many different types of games. I mean, Settlers of Catan is a phenomenal game that's relatively easy to learn. Let me see, what else do I have here?
Yeah, me and my roommates play Catan quite a bit, so I have learned.
I have one that's called Viticulture, which is basically competing to build vineyards. So if you want to get really up on pinkies up on that one.
Wonderful. Tom, real quickly, have you ever played the game Rummikub? I recently got into it. I swear my girlfriend is one of the best Rummikub players in the world. Have you ever played that one? Rummikub.
Is this like a variation off of like Gin Rummy, like with a deck of cards?
No, it's like
I've never heard of that.
Dominoes. You basically try and get combinations, 3 10s, 7, 8, 9, 3 of the same color type thing. Not 3 of the same color, 3 of the same number, or 3 in a row. You could do 4 also. So that's a fun game. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of good board games. I'm cliche a big fan of Yahtzee because I can yell out Yahtzee after I get Yahtzee, of course. Real quickly, speaking to Kendall Gill, fun fact, he went to high school with my girlfriend's mother, and apparently he was a very nice guy in high school. So shout out to Kendall Gill, now working the Bulls broadcasts. So, I mean, if he ever does get in a fight against Jake Paul or whoever it may be, I'm taking Kendall Gill because that's who I want to cheer for.
I saw on Saturday night, I think the fight was, kind of following it on Twitter, and I'm like, I don't even know who Jake Paul is. I mean, I've heard the name, but I think his claim to fame as a YouTube guy, I'm sure he did something horrifically graphic on there to get his claim to fame, but goodness gracious, what does the world come to?
I'll be honest with you guys, one of the few sports that I'm not really into is MMA. I just never got into it. But I can tell you this, one sport that I am really...
I mean, this is just I know you're transitioning, but this is just a celebrity trying to make money off of pay-per-view at that point.
But what do you think, Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter that wanted to box Floyd Mayweather? Basically, it was the same thing, a publicity stunt. And here we are talking to him on our show. Thanks, Castleman.
Well, yeah, but Conor McGregor was known more as a striker in UFC and was definitely outmatched against Floyd Mayweather, but at least is comparable, kind of sort of, at least in the same ring as opposed to what we're seeing now, which is aggravating to say the least. I couldn't think of anything better for my statement.
That's fine. Speaking of money, go ahead, Common.
Well, my statement, and I got a text message from Tom Castleman asking me if we were going to put it in the show today, and I was very excited to hear Tom want soccer in the show, and I told him I'm saving it for my statement of the week. So this is really the biggest sports story in the world. I know in America it may not be the number one story, but you look at soccer, the most popular game in the world. 12 clubs, 12 of the biggest clubs from either the Spanish League, Italian League, or English League came together to form what is called the Super League. So they're basically trying to get away from the Champions League, which is the European Cup for the best teams in Europe, where teams that are second through fourth in Spain, Italy, England, France, and Germany also get a chance to play in it, as well as the champions from some of the lower European leagues through qualifying processes and such. Like we see a team like Porto make the quarterfinals out of the Portuguese league, for example. We've seen Ajax in recent years from Netherlands make it, I think, the semifinals, or was it even the final a couple years back. So basically the main revenue teams are trying to form their own super competition separate from the Champions League. And this is really what this is a money grab because they want more money. And I know a lot of the teams lost money because of COVID, because the big clubs pour more money into their clubs, and they lost a lot more money during COVID than the smaller teams. But rumors are that this was in the works even before COVID, so maybe it was rushed a little bit quicker. Also, the architect of it was Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid, the team that I like least. But even my Barcelona soccer team currently joined the Super League. So now FIFA and UEFA, the Champions League, is saying that they're going to kick out all these teams from the Champions League this year. FIFA is saying that the players aren't going to get to play in the World Cup, the European Cup, the South American Cup. So it's sort of like a standoff to see who's going to blink first. I know Chelsea, one of the teams from England, actually joined the Super League and has now withdrawn their Super League thing because they are in the Champions League semifinals, and they said that they were going to kick them out of the Champions League if they did this. So hopefully more teams follow suit. Kind of off air, I talked to Tom about this, but it's similar to the blue bloods of soccer. I know in college basketball the players don't get paid, but it would be like Duke, UNC, UCLA, and the likes, Kentucky, forming their own NCAA tournament because in soccer they play two games. It's a two-leg affair. It may not be one, but basically it's not a 7-game series, so there's a lot of chances for upsets. And in the group stage, some of these smaller teams in Europe get a chance to play a Barcelona or Real Madrid, and they get a chance to get that historic win. And at the end of the competition, we still see a lot of the best teams going up against each other, and it's more special when a Real Madrid and a Liverpool play as opposed to seeing them play each other every week. So for me, it's all about the money, and there's a lot of upset people in the soccer community, and I actually think this league might fall through just because of the backlash they've gotten. And ironically enough, FIFA is really a corrupt organization, but FIFA looks like the good guy in all of this because of the corruptness and money grab that these clubs are looking for.
Yeah, a lot of teams. Sorry, Tom, I'll let you get to your point, but a lot of teams are jumping ship. Arsenal, Liverpool, Man U, and Tottenham are all leaving the league, apparently, are all exiting the league.
Right, and those are, ironically enough, those are the English teams. And the English government, the whole government of the country, said they were going to get involved and step in and block this. So this is how upset people are across the world. So it comes as no surprise that those English teams are the ones voting out because the government is speaking out against it. I know some of the leagues are saying they may not let the players even play in the league. So I think that this league is probably not going to end up happening. Fingers crossed. Tom, do you have any questions, analysis?
Yeah.
This is a money thing because this is your area here.
Yeah, like from what I'm gathering, from what I've seen, it's that this has been kind of in the works ever since NBC got the rights to the EPL for Saturday mornings, and like quote unquote American money has been getting into this because as Americans we don't have that like geographic connection to a lot of these teams. But I guess like just like more broad, like I know like it's a big territory thing, and that's why there is disqualified from international play and everything like that. Like if you like your example was Duke, Kentucky, UNC all forming their own basketball tournament. It's the blue blood, so to speak. Like that'd still be fun to watch if there weren't so much animosity, if there weren't so much like exclusivity, I guess, between the different leagues. Like would you watch a Super League if we just said here are the teams and we're stripping away everything else, just like the competition and play itself? Like is there actual appeal to doing that?
Right, and that's kind of what the Real Madrid president is saying, the guy who kind of formed this league. His arguing is that soccer's dying. People don't want to watch some of these early league group games in the Champions League. They just watch it when we get to the quarterfinals, the round of 16, when we do see all the best teams, which are often some of these teams that are in the Super League. From a pure entertainment standpoint, it would be interesting. The reason why I don't think it would work is because this is basically replacing the Champions League. Because these players already play so many games throughout the season, they're basically going to be playing midweek games. So, I mean, if soccer were a sport where guys could regularly play 3 or 4 games a week, I could see this. Maybe I can see this instead of possibly getting rid of the cup competitions in the main countries, but there's just so much tradition behind it, and the Champions League offers sort of the best of both worlds because we still get to see these big teams going up against each other, but yet we see some of the smaller teams also get a chance, and we get a chance to see some of those Cinderella stories, but oftentimes the final does end up being 2 of the top teams. So the Champions League, I think, is perfect as it is in it that we still get to see the big teams play each other, yet we still get the underdog story from the sheer perspective of seeing a lot of these best teams in it. Like, it sounds exciting. It really does. But I don't know that it's better than what we have right now, which is a perfect mix of giving everyone a chance to win that competition.
Yeah, and then this is also kind of what sets the table for the international play, right? Like that's part of what's, in terms of, setting a World Cup, for example, isn't that something that's a big part of this too?
Well, the World Cup isn't directly in it that FIFA has condemned it and has said that they're not going to let players who play in the Super League, they're not going to let them play in the World Cup, which again, I'm not 100% sure of the legality of it, whether they can do that or not. I know the FIFA president has said that he personally believes that he runs everything. So so there's 2 different governing bodies, Tom, here. Mm-hmm. There's FIFA, which is international play, which features the World Cup qualifying, international friendlies, European, South American championship levels, and then there's the UEFA, which is the club competition in Europe.
Sure.
So both governing bodies are condemning this league. What this league is basically doing is UEFA, which is separate from the World Cup teams. But I think that it is a big money grab. This is all about the money for these teams so that they can share this revenue amongst themselves, whereas some of those teams don't always make the Champions League. They get eliminated earlier in the Champions League. They lose a chance for that revenue, which is what they're looking to get right here. It's a cash grab, basically.
Okay, makes sense.
So I hope we don't see this league. I really, truly hope. Even for me, Barcelona's my team, and Barcelona has been hit harder over this pandemic than actually pretty much any other club team. So, and that's why they've sort of joined now, but there's rumors that they might be next to jump ship too, possibly. But even, Barcelona's supposed to be more than a club. It's supposed to uphold better ideals. Even if you need the money, there are other ways to do it. I think this isn't right, and it's not something that I would like to see personally. Drew, what do you think? Any thoughts on this?
No, I think you laid it out. I mean, it is a money grab, and it's putting together the best teams, the richest teams, and just making them richer, right? The rich get richer is what it would boil down to. So it's probably not a great idea, the money they would make would be extraordinary. I mean, the TV money would be huge. The stadiums would be filled. The sponsorship money would be massive. I mean, it would basically be having the NFL playoffs except a league, essentially.
Right. And what's interesting about this league, too, is you look at some of these teams in the English league, like Arsenal and Tottenham, they're not even in the top 4. Even Liverpool right now is not in the top 4 in England. So these teams, some of the teams in England who are joining and now backing out wouldn't even be in the Champions League this next year. So it's like a lot of the teams they picked are some of the best in the world, but some of the teams specifically out of England are not really the best in the world. They just have.
Oh, they picked the big names. Right. Yeah, they picked the blue bloods.
Real quickly before we wrap this up, and we've talked about it a lot. Bayern Munich out of Germany, one of the big club teams in the world, has said they will not participate in this. PSG from France also has not said they will participate in this. So those are kind of 2 of the top 5 clubs in the world and 2 of the biggest clubs. So if they're not on board and we have teams out of England pulling out, that's how this league is going to die. If they were to get Bayern Munich and PSG on board, then the league might happen. But it's one of those things where it's hard to put together a Super League when you don't have the 2 finalists from last year's European Championship in Bayern Munich and PSG. I mean, how super can your league be when you have Arsenal and Tottenham and you don't have Bayern Munich and PSG? So, anyways, that just about does it for Salute Your Sports Week 28. We got a big week next week, a big show, NFL Draft Preview, so much drama. We actually really haven't gotten to it much on this show in terms of the quarterbacks, Justin Fields slipping in the prospects, Mac Jones going up, all of a sudden, what's the guy out of North Dakota State, Lance or whatever? Trey Lance, that's it, has been getting a lot of love. Zach Wilson, a lot of love. Of course, I was giving him love before everyone started giving him love, even on this show. So a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about in regards to quarterbacks and also wide receivers in this draft. So we're going to have a big show next week breaking down the NFL draft. That'll do it for this week, though. Everyone have a good night. I'm going to be tuned in to the Timberwolves Kings game tonight to see how my locks of the week do. So I'll be busy doing that. Have a great night, everyone.